The Jersey Overtime. I'm John Fischer. I now have a more functional microphone. I've changed up the opening graphics a little bit so it's not so bright red streaming into your eyes. And I still have plenty to say about the New Jersey Devils, the purpose of these streams. And this stream is all about everybody's favorite Swiss forward that's not named Nico Hischier. And I'm blanking on any other Swiss Devils at the moment. But nevertheless, it's about Timo Meier. Everybody's favorite power forward, quasi-power forward, guy from the San Jose Sharks that was acquired in 2023 and has been on the team ever since. And last season was a real disappointment for Timo Meier. So we're going to transition and I'm going to walk through my thought process and my little deep dive for this stream, all about Timo Meier, where he came from, what went wrong last season, and most importantly, what's been going on ever since he signed the big contract in New Jersey. So let's get to it. So this is our introduction, and we just got through that, and we're going to jump right into Timo Meier. I broke this down into some subsections because it's really important for Timo Meier that he gets a full look. He's not just a guy that just came to the Devils recently. He's not a guy that the Devils just signed. He's been around now going into his fourth season with the Devils, and he played over 5 seasons with San Jose beforehand. So this is all about Timo Meier, so let's go all the way back to the beginning. But first, we need to really understand, why are Devil fans so disappointed with Timo Meier? Why are the people who matter unhappy with Timo Meier? So, the disappointment is pretty straightforward. Last season, he scored 24 goals. That sounds pretty good. It was third on the Devils. It was tied for 78th among all NHL forwards. He scored 44 points, good for fourth on the Devils, and tied for 140th among all NHL forwards. Power play results, while he gave you 6 power play goals, that was around 76th among NHL forwards. 10 power play points, again, tied at 140th among all forwards. In other words, the guy was not really a top scorer on the New Jersey Devils, even though he ranked 3rd and 4th respectively in goals and points. But compared to the rest of the league, he was not a top scorer whatsoever. What was also especially frustrating for me and many other Devils fans was that March came and the man started to score. 8 goals and 14 points in 22 games to close out the season from March 1st onwards, which meant he only had 16 goals and 30 points up until March, which was especially disappointing. Remember that the big deal Jack Hughes missed almost all of December due to that freak knife accident, and Timo Meier didn't step up and score goals. Jack Hughes came back, team looked to rebound, they didn't rebound, and Timo Meier just put up a whopping 2 goals before, maybe 3 goals before the Olympic break. That's not very good. And what's especially frustrating is the fact the man was trying. He took 269 shots. Clearly first on the New Jersey Devils last season, and 9th among all NHL forwards last season. The man was firing pucks, but only just under 9% of them went into the net. And as a result, you get low goal totals, and if he's not scoring goals, he certainly wasn't helping other people score goals either due to the lack of points. This is all for a guy who's getting paid $8.8 million on the cap. Timo Meier is the highest paid cap hit among forwards on the New Jersey Devils. His cap hit is higher than Nico Hischier until the Nico Hischier extension kicks in next year. It is the 24th highest cap hit among forwards as of this past season. Obviously, the cap is going up. Other guys are about to get paid. $8.8 million may look more like a relative bargain over time, but he's the highest paid forward with respect to the cap among forwards. He's the 3rd highest paid Devils since Dougie Hamilton and Luke Hughes each make $9 million to the cap. This is not good enough. I don't know how else to say it any more plainly than that. If you're going to get paid this much, if you're going to be among the higher paid forwards in the league, the expectation is you need to produce like that, and he didn't do that last season. And as we go through this slide deck that I put together, he didn't put it up. He may not be producing as much as you would expect for that much money even prior to this past season. So the disappointment is there. The frustration is real. Let's talk about it. But first, we need to take a step back and talk about, where did Timo Meier come from? Because I think it's important for Devils fans, especially now he's entering the 4th season of his current contract. We get an understanding of who was this guy, and maybe we've been expecting too much, or maybe the New Jersey Devils were expecting a different player. So let's talk about Timo Meier. Born on October 8th, 1996, and among this whole slide, this is the most important point. He's going to turn 30. Unlike Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. This man is about to turn 30. In NHL terms, usually when players start to turn 30, things start going sideways for some players. Some of the great players, they keep on being excellent. Some players, they start to lose a step. Injuries start catching up with them. The pace of the game gets away from them a little bit. And in the NHL, which is the highest level of hockey in the world, even a marginal difference can make a huge difference when you're looking for results. So the fact that he's about to turn 30 is a bit of a concern in of itself. And that's why we need to talk about this, and I want to talk about this. Timo Meier is a winger. As Sonny Mehta told in an interview recently with Anthony Corona, it doesn't matter if he's on the left wing or the right wing, and that makes sense. Most coaches coach forwards as F1, F2, and F3. It's not about where you start. It's about where you are when the play is happening. He's a winger. He's coming in typically from the side inward. And you'll definitely see inward very shortly. He's a left-handed shot. He's officially listed at 6 foot and 220 pounds, so he's a thick boy, plenty of strength, really apparent how he plays. Timo Meier is not a guy who, shirks from play. He's in the mix. He's going to dangerous areas, and we have the numbers to prove he's in the dangerous areas. He's not a super tall boy, but he's definitely a thick one. Now, his background, how he came to the NHL, he is Swiss, and he came up through the Swiss youth system with SC Herisau, Pikes Oberthrag, Rapswil Jona Lakers before he made a massive jump to Halifax of the QMJHL. And when he made that jump to Halifax, he won the Mike Bossy Trophy. He was a highly touted prospect. He played in the World Junior Championships. He played up a level age-wise for a 17, 18-year-old player. As a result, he was a highly touted prospect, and the New Jersey Devils had a chance to draft him in 2015. They didn't. They drafted Pavel Zacha. And just after Ivan Provorov and Zach Rowensky, San Jose selected Timo Meier at 9th overall. He proceeded to go forth and continue to crush it in the queue. He got traded to Ruan Noranda, which was looking for a big playoff run and hopefully a Memorial Cup push, which he absolutely helped out with. He was on the championship team with the Huskies and made it to the Memorial Cup. And he was the captain of the Swiss World Junior Championships in 2015-16, his second World Junior appearance. So with the Sharks, he got his ELC going and made his NHL debut in the following year in 2016-17. He split his time between the Barracuda and the Sharks themselves, both based out of San Jose. And once he stuck with the Sharks, that was it. He wasn't going to go back to the AHL. So this is a guy who hit the ground running, had strong development. He was a highly touted prospect, and he proved quickly why that was. With the Sharks, he played 7 seasons, albeit thanks to COVID, it wasn't 7 full seasons. Not Timo's fault. We can't blame him for that. He played 451 games. He scored over 150 goals. He took nearly 1,500 shots, and he shot at about 10%, 10.5%. So he was a very productive player. His top season as a Shark, as a full Shark, it was the season before he got traded. 77 games, 35 goals, over 70 points, over 300 shots on net. Made his only All-Star game appearance for a Sharks team that may have started tumbling down and going into the realm of rebuilding for the most part this decade. But Timo Meier was a legitimate star on that squad. Now, he did make the playoffs with the Sharks in his first 3 seasons with them. Limited data because, again, it's the Sharks. They were at the tail end of their run of making the playoffs, trying to contend, and finding a way to not make it for one reason or another. And unfortunately, after that 2019 season, once COVID hit, the Sharks started to crater team-wise. Nevertheless, he did play in 35 playoff games. He gave you 20 points in the playoffs. Not as high rate of scoring as he did in the regular season, but a decent rate nonetheless. That entry-level contract ended with that last playoff season. He got a big contract extension in 2019. He did break out in the last season of the ELC with 30 goals and 66 points. So there was lots of excitement. They gave him what I would call a raise, a kind of a bridge deal. Not quite, a long-term extension. It was only 4 seasons, so there was definitely some concern about, okay, what can you do? What can you show? Can you repeat that 30-goal performance for us, Timo? And they did give him a real significant bump in pay, going from an entry-level deal to $6 million per season on the cap. So big extension for Timo, not a long-term extension, and that would play a big role in terms of how he came to New Jersey towards the end of that contract. Now, one of the things I really want to highlight with this stream and really want to emphasize for myself, as well as my fellow people who matter, the Devils fans, what was Timo Meier doing as a Shark? And I think it's most important to go back about 3-ish seasons. So I compiled some numbers from Natural Stat Trick, one of my favorite sites online to get stats from. Very easy. Brad T is wonderful. Go to naturalstattrick.com. Free stuff. Anyway, I'm looking at the last 3 seasons. So 2019-20, 2021, which is the COVID-shortened season, and 21-22. Those are the last 3 full seasons Timo Meier played with San Jose. And 22-23 is when he got traded to New Jersey. However, he did play close to 60 games with San Jose. So I want to give a sense of how was he performing? Was this guy a top offensive player from the get-go? Was he struggling? Was he growing as a Shark? Let's look at the numbers and see what they tell us. So first, I want to look at 5-on-5 on-ice rates. And I realize that's a bit redundant in the title. Go with it. It's not enough to just look at the numbers and see if they're positive or not. I wanted to compare him to his peers, so I looked at every forward who played at least 600 5-on-5 minutes in that season. So 300 forwards met that criteria in 2019-20. And as you can see with the green numbers here, Timo Meier was in the top third across the board, meaning that when Timo Meier took a shift for the Sharks were performing quite well. And some of these numbers were exceptionally good. I put those in bold. So when Timo Meier took a shift, their high danger chance rate went up to 14 per 60, which is a very high rate, 17th in the league for that year. Expected goals, understandably, also went up to a large rate, tied 40th in the league at 2.79. So the Sharks were getting quite a bit of offense, except you look at the actual goals scored. His actual goal scoring rate from the team when Timo Meier took a shift was a bit more middling at 2.5, and the goals for percentage means the Sharks were heavily outscored. But again, the Sharks were starting to get real bad at that point. They weren't a playoff team in that 2019-20 season, and Timo Meier tried as he might, couldn't get him there. But you can't blame Timo Meier for having awful puck luck. I mean, a 95.5 PDO is just decrepit. The team really struggled to score goals with him, and the goaltender behind him just struggled to stop pucks. But from the things that Timo Meier could control, they were positive. In the COVID-shortened 2021 season, not as positive. Out of 201 forwards, the rates were a bit more middling with him on the ice. Again, the Sharks were still a bad team, but when Timo Meier was on the ice, they were giving you positive attempt rates with Corsi 4. They were giving you a positive expected goals rate, which is always good. And then once again, high danger chances went up. 13 per 60, a bit down from the previous season, but still a very high rate nonetheless. And just like the previous season, the Sharks got outscored quite a bit when he was on the ice. Of note, his offensive zone start percentage, meaning the percentage of his shifts that started in the offensive zone compared to the defensive zone, were favorable. But in 21-22, the following season, his last full season as a Shark, they were not favorable. This man was starting a lot of shifts in his own end of the rink. It was really rough for Timo Meier, but he made the best of it. And you could argue this is maybe his finest time as a Shark, not just with the points on the board, but in terms of the run of play. When he took a shift, and he took a lot of them, he played a lot of minutes for that team. 15.25 minutes per 60 is one of the highest rates among a forward from that season in the entire league. That 35.78 shot rate, one of the highest in the league. And again, high danger chances when he was on the ice, they went up. And in the 57 games he played as a Shark, once again, he got more favorable zone starts for sure. The Sharks were still outscored because they weren't good. But again, when he stepped on the ice, lots of good offensive happened, and some of these percentages are just ludicrously good. I mean, rule of thumb, if you see a Corsi, a shot, an expected goal, a high danger for percentage that's above 50, that's generally good. But if you're closer to 53, 54, 55, or even higher, that's excellent stuff because you're really tilting the ice against the opponents. The Sharks were eating good on offense if you ignore the lack of goals scored, except the goal score rate of 2.85 is a fairly good rate in general. It wasn't bad. It wasn't as good as 21-22 when the team was putting up nearly 3.3 per 60 when he was out there, but it was still a very good rate. This is a lot of numbers to basically say when Timo Meier took to the ice, offensive things happened and they were good things. And when you look at his individual numbers at 5-on-5, this is what Timo Meier himself actually did. His rate of goals across all 3 of these seasons and the partial season he played with the Sharks, very high rates of goals. If you're near 1 or above, that's a great rate among forwards at 5-on-5. And the man was putting him up at a very high rate before he got traded. The assists, definitely not as consistent. There was definitely more variation there, but he was generally positive and one of the best in the league in his last full season as a Shark. As a result, his rate of point scoring at 5-on-5 was very, very high. Similarly enough, the man was a shooter. 10 shots per 60 is a very high rate of shots, and he got up to 12 and a half in his final full season as a Shark. That's just absolutely fantastic, fabulous, fantabulous. Put all the superlatives together. It was wonderful, and the second highest rate among all forwards in that league. That's higher than Leon Draisaitl. That's higher than Alexander Ovechkin. That's higher than Sidney Crosby. That's higher than Connor McDavid. I think David Pastrnak was the one guy who beat him. The point is, you're second in the league. You're shooting a lot. And as a result, he was expected to score a lot of goals, and he did. He created a lot of attempts, and those attempts generated offense, and they were high-scoring chances. Again, an individual high-danger rate above 4 per 60 is really, really good, and this man went past 5 in 3 of these 4 seasons I'm showing on screen right now. The guy was going to the net. High danger, as defined by Natural Stat Trick, means you're in the center slot and you're at the crease. That's the dangerous area. That's the greasy area, as Ken Danico likes to say. That's the area where a lot of goals get scored in this league. And this man was adept more than a lot of other forwards in this whole league at doing it. And he did so as a Shark. I have included rebounds created. So Natural Stat Trick, they defined rebounds as shots and attempts taken within, I want to say, 3 or 4 seconds after an event being taken, a shot attempt, I believe. So it's a bit of a proxy rather than a legitimate rebound count. But even so, the man was generating rebounds, which we'd expect because he's shooting the puck a lot. So even if it's not going in the net, the goaltender's not just catching it in his chest and freezing for a play. Pucks were there for others to feast on. And based on the assist count, they were feasting. Of note is Timo Meier's individual shooting percentage. That's the only thing that across the board was not in the green. Even his 10.4 shooting percentage in 2019-20, his highest on this chart, it was only 126th among forwards. I mean, it's just not that great. I mean, it's not that bad because he's shooting the puck so much, but it's not a high rate of shooting percentage. And what we see here, and you're going to see this with the Devils numbers, is that unlike Anthony Mantha, whom I streamed about last month, Timo Meier is not as much of a finisher. He's more about volume. He's more about, I will take lots of shots, and those shots will yield production. And as you saw with the Sharks, that happened. And it was definitely happening in 2022 and 2023 when he had his career year where he ultimately got to 40 goals over the whole season because he scored 31 for the Sharks as a whole. Now, this is in 5-on-5. Timo Meier also played quite a bit on the power play for the Sharks. Now, one of the laments I keep seeing from the people who matter is, why isn't Timo Meier on the first power play unit in New Jersey? Why doesn't he play more on the power play? Truth be told, he only got really significant minutes on the power play in his final time as a Shark. Before then, his ice time per game was a good 2 minutes, but that's not 3 or 4 minutes per game that you see from the real guys who just dominate power plays, like your Jack Hugheses, your Alexander Ovechkins, your David Pastrnaks. That's not to say it was bad or that Timo Meier was bad for the power play, but as you can see by the lack of green here, they're not exactly wonderful numbers. Again, San Jose's power play may have started falling apart a bit, but these rates of offense when Timo Meier was on the ice, not that amazing, not that great, not awful, but not necessarily superlative until you get to that last time he was a Shark. And before that, you have to go all the way back to his first season on the contract. And individually, though, Timo Meier was trying his best. And of note is that his numbers individually were fantastic for the Sharks. Those on-ice rates for the Sharks not being so great, that's more of a function of the team. Timo himself, okay, he himself outside of 21-22 and his last time as a Shark, wasn't scoring a lot of goals himself, but he was generating production. He was definitely taking a lot of shots. I mean, anything over 12 per 60 on a power play is crazy. And the man was putting up 18. His last time as a Shark was over 20 per 60, which is just ludicrous. His expected goal rate as a result was very good. And his high danger rate, the only time it was really bad was in that 21-22 season where I have to suspect somebody on the coaching staff must have pulled him away from the net in the slot because he was still generating a lot of scoring chances. He was still generating a lot of shooting attempts, the 10th highest rate among the entire NHL in that season as a Shark. And he was generating rebounds. And it was also the one season where his shooting percentage was really, really good until the last time he was a Shark. So individually, Timo Meier was very good on the power play. He was doing his job. The rest of the Sharks, not as much. And I think that was a contributing factor as to why the Sharks ultimately had to move on from him. And they did. But before I move on to that, let's take some takeaways from all those numbers I just dive here, just to sum everything up from the last 4 slides. In 5-on-5, Meier was legitimately a play driver. What that means is that when he took a shift, the Sharks were better. The Sharks took more offense. They outperformed their opponents, as evident by the percentages. They started to tilt the ice in the right direction, which was still very valuable for a team that didn't have enough of that and suffered a lot of games. The problem with that is, of course, it was undercut by some really bad on-ice shooting percentages, meaning that when he was on the ice, the goals weren't happening. So it was a lot of case where you would watch him play and you go, wow, this is good, this is positive, this is helpful. But without the results, you get the sense of, well, what is it all worth? And that's really driving the frustration from this past season with Timo Meier as a Devil. In 5-on-5, the numbers are very clear. He took a lot of attempts in dangerous areas. He basically thrives going to the net. Once again, you hear about greasy goals. This man is covered in grease. Call him a mechanic if you have to. He is getting the work done. He is going to the dangerous areas. He's making the plays happen. Whether or not it's resulting in goals is a bit of a mystery. But also of note in 5-on-5 is that he can and does rush up ice with the puck as well. Not necessarily as the main forward, but he's been very good as a secondary or a third forward coming into the zone and either cleaning up the mess, becoming an option in those dangerous areas, or just joining a net front presence that's crashing the net. The guy was driving play forward. He can move well. He takes a ton of shots. And the production followed. On the power play, generated rebounds. He got assists. But again, the finish himself, up until that last full season and that partial last season in San Jose, not a lot. But again, he's shooting the puck a lot and creating a lot of chances himself. Still in dangerous areas, he was definitely used differently based on that high danger rate dropping to just 2 per 60. That's definitely indicative of being used differently than before, but he definitely got put back to where he really thrives, and it was yielding results for San Jose. Not as dominant scoring-wise, not as dominant with the on-ice rates, but still generally positive. And then that last season with San Jose before he got traded, he really was dominant. I mean, if San Jose wanted to say, hey, Timo, I know we're bad, but we can build this around you, they could have done that. They could have, but they didn't. So in 2022-2023, Timo Meier was awesome. The San Jose Sharks were far from awesome. They finished with 22 wins the whole season. It was their 4th straight season without the playoffs. It was definitely the time for rebuilding in the Bay. So, Tom Fitzgerald, general manager of the New Jersey Devils at the time, had a very good Devils team. Lindy Ruff was having him rush him up and rush him down. Lots of wins. The Devils would go on to have a 50-win season, and they knew they had an opportunity to go deep. They had an opportunity to contend. They had an opportunity to really, really add some talent, and they knew that Timo Meier was available because that contract was about to expire. He was doing his job. He was performing very well, crashing the net, driving the play, taking lots of shots, all things the Devils always could use, even to this day. So they decided to inquire with Mike Greer. Fitzgerald and Greer made some deals, and Tom Fitzgerald did not come in second place on this one. On February 26th, the trade went down. The Devils got Timo. They also got a whole package with Timo to help make the numbers work. The full deal is as follows. Timo Meier to the Devils, along with Scott Harrington, Timur Ibragimov, Santeri Hataka, who actually did play a little bit for New Jersey, mostly with Utica as a defenseman, Zach Edmond, and a 5th-round pick in 2024. San Jose gets Shakir Mukhamadullin, who is now with another organization, Fabian Zetterlund, the swole Swede himself, now with a different organization, Nikita Akutyuk, now with a different organization, a 2023 first-round pick, a 2024, a pick that could have been a first-rounder if the Devils went deep in the playoffs in 2023 and if Timo Meier played 50% of the games or more, but that didn't happen. The Devils got eliminated by Carolina, so the terms were not met, and it became a second-rounder in 2024 and a 7th-rounder in 2024. So all things considered, the Devils made a very reasonable trade. Mukhamadullin was a first-round pick for the Devils, but he was the 3rd pick in that 2020 draft after Dawson Mercer and the infamous Alexander Holtz. The Devils, I don't think, really miss Mukhamadullin. No disrespect to him. But he's on his third organization trying to stick around and be somebody in the NHL. Fabian Zetterlund, I like the swole Swede. I've always rated him as a bottom six forward that could help. But again, the results haven't exactly lit anybody on fire. I'm sure he's fantastic in the gym. The dude is yoked, but it's got to result on the ice. And Kotkaniemi was another defensive prospect that there was some hope. I think Devil fans were excited about how physical he could be. But again, that hasn't necessarily panned out. And the picks are the picks. They've been made. They've been dealt with, actually, in the case of San Jose. The Devils got the best player out of the deal by far. And the Devils didn't lose like a massive prospect that you just look at and go, man, I wish the Devils still had this guy today. Your mileage may vary on that, but I think the Devils made out very well with this trade. So, Timo Meier jumps to New Jersey. He plays 21 games with them, and he scores 9 goals and 14 points, and people are excited because he is exactly what he was advertised. He was crashing the net. He was rushing up ice with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. He was finishing plays. In the playoffs, the production wasn't as great, but a lot of fans really enjoyed how he kept going after the New York Rangers, our hated rivals. He also took a really nasty hit from a really nasty Jacob Trouba in Game 7. But the guy was, again, doing his best. 72 shots in 21 games in the season, 37 shots in 11 games in the playoffs. The guy was putting in the effort. People were generally happy. They were happy that the Devils got him in the trade. They were happy he was in New Jersey. And so they were very happy when the Devils gave him a big fat contract extension. June 28th, 2023, the Devils announced an 8-season, full-length term contract extension worth $70.4 million. Big money, makes him the highest paid forward on the cap up until the Nico Hischier extension that was announced earlier this summer. This contract will run through 2030-31. They'll run into the start of the next decade. Signing bonuses have range, so the man is getting a flat rate. It's not consistent from season to season, but the money is split up between signing bonuses and actual contract per season. So what that means is that he gets paid pretty well throughout the season, but he gets a big stack of money somewhere between $3.3 or $6 million on July 1st, for the past few years and for the next few years going forward. By the way, as an aside, condolences to the Lemieux family. Claude Lemieux was Timo Meier's agent. Obviously, he's a New Jersey Devils legend, Conn Smythe winner in 1995. Fantastic player, fantastic pest, very notorious, very outspoken. Condolences to his family. That being said, moving back to Timo Meier. So the contract, as is tradition under Tom Fitzgerald, it had a full no movement clause. But weirdly enough, it didn't start until the second year of the deal. Either Puckpedia was confused about that. I don't think they were. They're typically on top of this type of stuff. But generally, the NMC just means Timo Meier cannot be a Utica Devil. He cannot go to Adirondack. He is in New Jersey for the length of the contract. Interestingly enough, because it's Tom Fitzgerald, the man had a full no-trade clause until 2028-29, and that becomes a no-trade list. So basically, Timo Meier, for the final 3 seasons of this contract, he can submit a 15-team no-trade list, meaning there are 17 other teams he will accept a trade to. So there is a bit of an out in there, and again, traditional for Tom Fitzgerald contracts. The clauses are there, presumably to help with the money and to help make the player feel more secure and give him more power. At the time, this was 10.54% of the salary cap at the time of the signing. That's from Puckpedia. Highest among Devils forwards, and again, until the Hischier extension officially starts, Timo Meier has the highest cap hit among all Devils forwards, more than Jesper Bratt, more than Jack Hughes, and more than Nico Hischier until next season. And he is only behind Luke Hughes, which only started last season, and Dougie Hamilton in terms of total cap hit. So in other words, Timo Meier got paid incredibly well, and he got paid to be a core member. You don't get a contract like this unless the organization thinks you're a top player. That means this is a contract that says, we are building this team around you. And at forward, it's pretty clear who the Devils have built this team around, or at least should have been building around. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier. He's the fourth of your Fab Four. He's the fourth man on the Mount Rushmore, if you will. In fact, forget I said Mount Rushmore, because unfortunately, the rushing eventually stopped next season, and the struggle started to begin. So Timo Meier with the Devils so far. So after that 40-goal, 22-23 season between Sharks and Devils, he put up 28 26, and 24 goals each. After the 66-point 22-23 season, 52, 53, and again, 44 points this past season. Not exactly numbers that you would expect for a guy making $8.8 million. Not exactly the type of production you expect to be when you're the 28th highest paid forward or the 20th highest paid forward or in that high range of forwards getting paid. Certainly not as much when you see Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, and Jesper Bratt outproducing you for less money. Overall with the Devils, he's played 247 games. He's put up 87 goals. He's taken 786 shots. He's actually shooting at about 11%, which is surprisingly high. His sole playoff appearance, he did put up 2 goals and 4 points in 5 games in that short series of Carolina. But once again, just like his rate of scoring in this past season, the timing kind of matters here. His 2 goals were in games 4 and 5 respectively. He got an assist in game 3 and 4. The Devils won game 3 in overtime thanks to Simon Nemec, but the others were in losing battles. Again, he's trying his best, but once again, you wish you had the points maybe in games 1 and game 2. So let's look at the on-ice rates. Let's look at the same numbers we look at with the Sharks to see how it has been going for the Devils. So in 2022-23, when he joined the Devils for those 21 games, numbers were fantastic. I'm going to spoil this for you. He played a lot with Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes in those 21 games. And as a result, those guys were crushing it in the run of play. Lots of rushing, lots of movement, lots of things happening. So 23-24, again, that's when things started to fall apart for the Devils. This was the season where Lindy Ruff went from being told he was sorry to please get out of here, sir, and got replaced. Travis Green had to see it out the rest of the season. This was a season where the Devils tried, kind of didn't, kept trying, kind of didn't, ultimately didn't make the playoffs, suffered through a lot of rough goaltending performances, and just a lot of general frustration from the highs and the lows of maybe they can do this to maybe they don't. And Timo Meier, when he was on the ice, well, the numbers weren't as favorable. He was definitely more mediocre, sub-mediocre in some respects when he took a shift with the Devils that season. When the Devils were outshot when he took a shift. They were outdone in expected goals, meaning as much as they were giving up, they were generating a good rate of expected goals, they were giving up more, which is not good. It's one thing to have a high rate themselves, but if you're giving as much or more back, that's not favorable at all. He was giving you a high rate of high danger chances, but a definite drop off of that mind-boggling 16.5 per 60 rate from his first time with the Devils. And as a result, the goal scoring definitely went down. It wasn't super bad at 2.6 per 60, but the Devils were heavily outscored when Timo Meier took a shift. And as a result, his team didn't score enough goals. They were bleeding goals backwards. It was rough. Definitely not what you would want in the first season of a big 8-season contract. So Sheldon Keefe comes in 24-25, and that's where we start seeing Timo Meier basically tethered to Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer for the most part. And the on-ice rates were fantastic. Like, we're talking high rates of usage, 23rd highest time on ice per game in 5-on-5. Some of the best rates of Corsi, shots for, expected goals, high danger chances. When he took to the ice, the Devils were creating lots of offense. Great things, right? Well, the goal scoring didn't go up. It actually went down. It went down by 0.21 per 60, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's buttressed by the fact that the Devils were outscoring their opponents by a significant margin. So it looked great in terms of results, but you just had to wonder, you're generating all these high danger chances. You're generating all these shooting attempts. You're generating all these shots on net. Where are the goals? Where are the goals, my dude? And they just weren't there. And I think that's a typo. That should not be a 59. That should be a 39 or a 29, actually. I apologize for that. His offensive zone starts, because of that tethering to Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer, terrible, but definitely unfavorable, I should say. Lots of zone starts for Timo Meier in the defensive zone. Nico Hischier has been under Sheldon Keefe their power center, their power matchup center. He draws the tough matchups at home. He draws tough matchups on the road, even with how the Devils utilize their forwards as best as they can. So what that means is that Timo Meier is usually starting at the opposite end of the rink, which in a way makes these positive numbers on the ice for Corsi, for shots, for expected goals, that much more impressive, because more often than not, he's not starting in a favorable position on his shifts. And for the first time as a Devil, and the first time, honestly, for a while for Timo, his PDO, the combination of on-ice shooting percentage and save percentage, was above 1, or 100, depending on how you calculate it. It was a positive rate. It was great. Timo Meier was looking more positive, more favorable. Even though the production wasn't quite there, you would watch him play. You would watch that line with Nico Hischier, and you would just go, all right, this is working. I can support this. This is good. I am pleased. Then came last season. Timo Meier was used a lot more. His rate of ice time actually went up a little bit, 15th highest in the league. When he was on the ice, the Devils had a fantastic shooting rate, fantastic expected goals, once again, even higher than the previous season, which was really, really good. Higher rate of high danger chances even at 13.3, and yet fewer goals, much fewer goals. The Devils had his PDO was really, really bad. Timo Meier's on-ice shooting percentage was one of the lowest in the league. His defensive zone starts were much higher than his offensive zone starts. That didn't help. And unfortunately, like the previous season, the Devils got outscored a lot. So you definitely have that perception of, even if the results are good and you see him driving the net and you see him making plays and occasionally getting goals, it wasn't nearly enough as you would hope. And worse, the other team was absolutely outscoring Timo Meier and by extension, Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer. I mean, a 40% goals for percentage means the Devils are getting killed. And in retrospect, it's a question why Sheldon Keefe just kept that line together, whether that was Tom Fitzgerald's edict, whether that was Sheldon Keefe thinking that the other on-ice numbers are so good. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's surprising to me because the results weren't there and the goals absolutely weren't. So adds to the disappointment of his last season. Timo Meier himself. So again, as a Shark, lots of shots, lots of point production, lots of high danger chances, and that last part has actually continued in New Jersey. I am not kidding you. The man has had a fairly high rate of goal scoring relative to other NHL forwards, at least. Maybe not enough to be the 20th highest paid forward, but still a positive rate up until this past season. This past season, the man shot at just over 6.7%, one of the lowest shooting percentages at 5-on-5. I mean, it's 309th out of 351 forwards. It's rough. And you could see in previous seasons, it wasn't exactly a burner either. He wasn't lighting it up. He didn't have a hot stick. And that was always the case in San Jose. He was never an elite finisher per se. He was always about generating opportunities, so much so that the points would come for that. And in 22-23, there was evidence of that happening. These rates are very similar to what he did in San Jose. In the previous 3 seasons with New Jersey, he's kept up a high rate of shots and a high rate of shooting attempts. In fact, he was a top 10 attempter per 60 in 5-on-5. Top 10. That's what you want for $8.8 million on the cap. You want a top 10 guy. You would love that. You would love the scoring rate. Look, 6th in 24-25, 12th last season. The guy was getting into dangerous areas and getting attempts off. And even though the high danger rate was below 5 per 60, being above 4 is still really good and ranks very well among forwards. You and I can live with that. You and I can live with a shots per 60 rate, hovering around the top 30 among all these forwards, and especially top 10 last season at 9.83. But what's struggling is the lack of production. The assist rate was really, really low because it wasn't just that Timo Meier wasn't scoring, but his line mates and defensemen and other teammates at the time, they weren't scoring with him. And as a result, it's a lot of great process, but little results, and this is a results-oriented business. Hence, the frustration and disappointment. Let's go to the power play. So, his most minutes on the power play came in those 21 games with the Devils when he got traded, and when he stepped on the ice, the Devils' power play was great that season, and he kept it going. Good rates when he was on the ice. In his first full season with the Devils, not as great. And he definitely floated between the first and the second units. And again, that adds to the frustration. You're paying this guy $8.8 million. You traded for him. You know his quantities are good. You know he shoots the puck a lot. Why isn't he just tabled to power play 1 and telling Jack Hughes, just feed this man? Well, maybe that should be the plan on the power play, but it hasn't been for the last 3 seasons. His shooting percentage was actually surprisingly good in 23-24 and 24-25. And his 24-25 season, it looked like the Devils really got a handle on what they could do because their on-ice rates when he took a shift on the power play were very good in that season. And it continued on last season with the exception, of course, actually scoring goals. Once again, great processes when he was on the ice. Good things happening for offense. But the goals weren't there. The pattern is continuing. Once again, Timo Meier individually has not been the problem. In the seasons with New Jersey, the man has been a high rate goal scorer when he does actually finish finish the play himself. This man is scoring points at a high rate with the exception of last season on the power play. His shooting rate has increased every season or every full season to the point where he was number 1 in the league on the power play in shots per 60. Number 1. You could argue the man should have gotten more power play time, and I can agree with that. I can sympathize with that argument, but the guy was generating lots of shots with the minutes he was getting. And as a result, high rate of expected goals, high rate of attempts, high rate of scoring chances, and even the high danger rates. He got back to double digits per 60 for the first time since joining the Devils in 21 games. The guy was putting in the work himself. He's creating rebounds. He's making things happen. But once again, the shooting percentage. The shooting percentage. It was very high in his first full season, which kind of masked some of the results. It's how he got to be a top 10 goals per 60 guy in 23-24. But the shooting percentage definitely cooled off on the power play. And the result, it was much more middling last season. And once again, good processes. You love the shots. You love the effort. You love the performances. You don't like the results. I don't like the results. I don't think the Devils do too. So let's do some statistical takeaways before I highlight some other points. So in 5-on-5 play, Meier, who was a play driver in San Jose, has still been a play driver. And I will touch on this point in the next slide. Hischier plus Mercer plus tough zone starts. These have been hard minutes the last 2 seasons for Timo Meier. These are not favorable minutes, and the matchups are definitely not favorable. And he's still out there, and the Devils are still putting up positive percentages for Corsi, positive percentages for shots, positive percentages for expected goals and high danger chances. His high danger rate chance himself and by the team isn't as high as it was in San Jose, but it was still relatively great to his peers. Again, anything above 4 per 60 is really, really good, and Timo Meier has maintained that, and he's been above 5. I would love it if he gets to be above 5 for the next few seasons, but the man will still go to the net and make things happen, and that's really the main takeaway there. And once again, Meier's about volume. It's not about finish. It's the opposite of Anthony Mantha in that sense. He's going to take a lot of shots. He's going to get to the scoring chance. He can support a rush. He can create rebounds. But if you're expecting him to finish, it's not that great. And so that's part of the frustration. It's really a source of this. You're watching this man play, and you're just wondering, how come this is not happening more often? How come this isn't happening? And that's been the same case on the power play. You could say, yeah, maybe he should get some more ice time. But again, his impact hasn't been insignificant. The Devils' on-ice rates eventually became favorable. Meier's individual numbers have been great, but the shooting percentage and the goals resulting wasn't very good. And last season was really rotten for luck. Previous seasons prior to that definitely looked a lot better, but last season, the lack of shooting percentage from his teammates and himself, again, lots of good looks on the power play, but not a lot of good results. And just to hammer home the point, I'm going to quickly show a video I found online. This is a clip. This is a compilation by a guy named Hat Trick Kane. Somebody requested him to do a goal compilation of all of Timo Meier's goals. And I wanted to show a little bit of this to really highlight the fact that Timo Meier isn't just taking a lot of shots in dangerous areas, but that's where quite a few of his goals came from, even if 24 isn't as much as you think he should be scoring. So just to highlight this first goal of his season, look, Timo Meier is coming in late. Players are driving in, he cleans it up. Greasy goal. I'm sure Ken Danico loved it. I liked it. It's a goal against Tampa Bay early on. You like it. Here he is on the power play. Here, he's distributing from behind the net. Okay, he's on the primary. He's outside of the dot. It's a very good snipe, but Timo Meier doesn't take a lot of great snipes like that because he's usually closer to the net for those shots. Here's an example of Timo Meier, once again, getting close. He's in this area over here, gets a good tip, and there you go. Breaks the tie against Florida in the third period. You like to see it. And once again, Timo Meier, he continues to play out to the back. It's an empty net situation. Where is he going? He's going to the far post, and he's able to chip this puck in, force a tie game, and take this game to an extra point in overtime. So the point I want to make here, and I'll just skip a bit because there's one other play I really want to show. Yeah, it's this one. So Timo Meier, once again, he's in front. He gets a tip. There's a goal. The thing about tips and deflections is that these types of goals are difficult to repeat, but he's getting to the areas that are difficult to get to because defenders focus on them, team defenses coordinate to protect these areas of the ice. He's getting into these spots and making results happen. it just didn't happen enough last season. Again, 24 doesn't seem like a lot because he's been able to score 30 before, and in the season that he was acquired, he got a total of 40 between San Jose and New Jersey. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my presentation so I can follow along here. So continuing on. So Timo Meier, I wanted to highlight his common teammates. I'm focusing on 200 minutes at 5-on-5 for this at Natural Stat Trick. In fact, let me bring this up briefly. I'll switch over in a moment to make a point. In 22-23, I cut this down to 100 minutes just to highlight, because he only played 21 games with the Devils. His biggest teammates at forward were Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes, the big deal himself. This was followed by Jesper Boqvist, of all players, who's now a Devil again, Ryan Graves, and John Marino. And then since then, it's been Hischier and Mercer primarily. In 23-24, it was Mercer, Hischier, and Bratt in that order, with defensemen in order being Ball, Marino, Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec, Jonas Siegenthaler. Over 200 minutes with those guys. In 24-25, that's when Sheldon Keefe came in. The tethering really got there. 738 minutes combined with Nico Hischier, which is a remarkable amount of minutes. Like, the man played over 1,100 minutes at 5-on-5 that season. So the majority of those minutes, the vast majority of those minutes, were with the captain. And Dawson Mercer got to play over 500 minutes with him. Mercer started to have some struggles, so Stefan Nason got called up. There wasn't an injury. Dawson Mercer just doesn't miss games. But Stefan Nason got enough minutes with Meier, over 400 minutes. And then the defensemen behind him were Kovacevic, Pesce, Luke Hughes, Brendan Dillon, Siegenthaler, and Hamilton in that order. Last season, the tethering continued with over 700 minutes with Nico Hischier, over 600 minutes with Dawson Mercer, and Jesper Bratt just getting over the 200-minute cutoff here. Siegenthaler, Hamilton, Luke Hughes, and Hamilton twice. I wrote him twice. That's weird. Apologies for that. And Brendan Dillon. The point I'm trying to make here is that if it's not your imagination, this man has played a ton with Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer. The challenge with that is that, and we're just going to take a quick peek here at Natural Stat Trick at his teammate numbers, is that if you take a look, and I'm just going to look at last season just to make this point, is that if you look at the various 5-on-5 numbers, the on-ice numbers, the on-ice rates I should use. I'll just wait for Natural Stat Trick to reload for me here. You know, we're streaming. We're just making it happen here. We'll just wait a moment. I am indeed not a bot, Natural Stat Trick. So, getting back to this point, this man has played way more minutes with Mercer and Hischier than he did away from them at 5-on-5 last season. And the rates with Hischier and Mercer are positive. But the note I want to point out here is that Meier without Hischier and Mercer is still pretty good. Hischier was a little worse off without Meier, but Mercer was definitely under 50% in Corsi without him. You look into expected goals, which is on the right here. You look at goals. You know, these two got outscored as a unit. This was rough this past season. Expected goals, once again, Timo Meier with Hischier, great. Meier and Hischier without each other, not as great. Meier can survive without Mercer. Mercer really could not have survived without Meier last season. And this was also true when you look at the high danger rates. That's one of the things that Meier excels at. Once again, Meier without Hischier struggles surprisingly in this regard. In terms of percentage of high danger chances, meaning are the Devils being out high dangered or if the opposition is doing it the other way. Hischier can survive without Meier. Mercer really can't. And we can dive in deeper at your own leisure. But the point I wanted to make here is that if we go back to the presentation here, is that despite the threesome for the last two seasons being so close together, it's not a mutual agreement. Hischier and Meier, fine, cool. But Mercer has really been the weak link on that threesome. And I think that may be a contributing factor to why Meier's numbers haven't been so great. And given that they were outscored significantly last season, it's a real surprise that Keefe just kept them together. Usually when team lines, units, players get outscored, that's a reason to change them. That's a reason to look for something different. That didn't happen. So let's continue on a little bit. As a quick aside, Timo has been a bit of a meme that he scores a lot in March. That's kind of true, but his highest rate of point production has actually been in November and October, just by a smidge, just by a little bit. It's not by a smidge for November. November, his rate of points per game is actually much higher than it was in March. His goal scoring rate is also a little higher in November too. But his October rates are still very good. March is still a very good month to be Timo Meier. Very good to have him on your fantasy team. But when you're in January and December, not so good. Those are his lowest rates of production. And that's over his whole career. That's including San Jose. That's including seasons with the Devils prior to last season. So yeah, Meier legitimately is a producer in March, but he's also a producer in the early season. So once again, that's a bit of a struggle and something that internally the Devils kind of have to figure that if you need this guy to produce in January, you need this guy in December, which are two very important months. I mean, it's how the Devils lost last season. Jack Hughes got injured. Timo Meier definitely didn't step up, and people definitely noticed. And unfortunately, that's kind of been the story of his career. So that's something if the Devils can find some answers about, or Timo Meier can find some answers about, fantastic. Now, what could be done? Well, the reality is Timo Meier is still signed for another 4 seasons. That deal is not ending until 2031. He may get dealt, and maybe in a few seasons that discussion happens, but for next season, he's a New Jersey Devil unless he and Sonny Mehta have a falling out and he says, I'm willing to make a trade. So let's assume, let's expect Timo Meier to be a New Jersey Devil. What can you do with him? Well, based on the numbers of what he did in San Jose and what he's done in New Jersey, is that this man will, and continue to shoot in dangerous areas. He will shoot the puck a lot. He will go to the net. He will go to the scoring chance areas. He will take attempts. He will get tips. He will get the greasy ones. He will try to get the greasy ones at least. Although those rates may have not been as high as they were as a Shark, that's been his bread and butter in the NHL. In the 7 seasons that we covered in terms of numbers, this is the story of Timo Meier. This makes him a fantastic second or third forward. Maybe he's not the guy to lead the zone entry, but he's the guy that can get open. He's the guy that can cause a ruckus in front of the net. He's the guy that can help out in crashing the net. You saw some clips of him doing exactly that even last season. That's his role. That's what this is what he excels at. Therefore, since you're paying him so much, you need to help him excel with that. How can you do this? Well, maybe the Devils need to consider somebody else to crash the net on his line. He's getting to the net, but having somebody else to get there or to come in late to get those loose pucks that rebound just a little further out of the traffic, that could be a big help. Alternatively, you can have Meier himself crashing that and somebody else creating the rebounds. That's another possibility. You can definitely mix and match. Nico Hischier is pretty good at doing everything. Dawson Mercer is very streaky and hot and cold as a player. It's kind of questionable whether or not he's really that guy. And therefore, I think the Devils really need to reconsider how they're going to use Timo Meier. Sheldon Keefe is back as head coach. Sonny Mehta has said he's the coach for the time being. Fine, fair. But Keefe, you got to consider doing something different with Timo Meier. Even if you chalk up last season to a lot of bad puck luck and a lot of bad PDO, it's a question of whether or not this is working, because when it was going well with a better shooting percentage, we're still talking about 25 goals and 50 points, which is still not exactly what you want for $8.8 million on the cap. So maybe this is where the Devils need to consider, and Keefe especially needs to consider, either taking Meier away from Dawson Mercer, which may not be great for Mercer, but may need to be done to help Meier out, or maybe even take Meier away from Hischier and Mercer entirely. Consider giving him more favorable zone starts, so he's not starting 45% of his offensive zone starts, meaning that he's in the other end of the rink most of the time. Maybe giving him more time with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt and giving him more offensive defenders behind him. He's had over 200 minutes with Luke Hughes and Dougie Hamilton, but those top defensemen that's been behind him have included Kevin Ball, Jonas Siegenthaler, Jonathan Kovacevic. Like, those are guys who are not moving the needle offensively. Like, they may not be anchors on it. Okay, maybe sometimes it is in the case of Kovacevic and Dylan. But the fact of the matter is giving him some more dynamic to help be an active support, to play as a fourth forward at times, to jump up and activate. That could help create the additional looks and additional opportunities that a Meier can benefit from, either with the additional assist possibilities or possibly getting more pucks in those dangerous areas so he can finish them or at least get some attempts off. And in general, just give him some fewer minutes. The man has been averaging over 15 minutes per 60, which is fantastic for Meier. He's definitely getting his ice time in there. But is it working out? Maybe you need to hold him back, give him a couple more shifts off, and maybe that could help Timo out, give him more selective spots. I'm not saying only play him 11 minutes a night at 5-on-5. I'm saying it doesn't have to be 15 minutes per 60. Just bring him just a couple shifts, fewer shifts, and you might get the same results and maybe a slightly fresher Timo Meier later in games, assuming that's even a factor. And in general, more power play time. I can agree with this idea. I'm not saying he needs to be stapled on the off wing of Jack Hughes and say, 86, your job is to pass it to 28 and do nothing else, because that's a bad idea. Let Jack Hughes cook as he wishes. But if you're going to give him more power play time, you really need to put Meier in those positions to succeed. Again, high danger, scoring chance areas. He needs to be in the bumper. He needs to be at the net. He needs to be able to rotate into those areas if he's playing at the wing or behind the net in the 1-3-1 setup, assuming Ted Donato wants to continue that with the Devils. So those are options of what the Devils can do to help Timo bounce back from a 44-point season. As a result, I do expect it to get better. It's possible he can score 30 goals. The harsh reality is that it's still a bit of a gambler's fallacy argument I'm about to make, but the guy's puck luck could be better, and he could do a lot of the same things he did last season and the season before that and give you more results, and then everyone will just go, well, what did he do differently? And the reality may be not that much different, because he's always been great about getting great volume of shots. He's been great about generating expected goals, great about going to the net and getting opportunities to and at the net. Great on ice metrics overall. A lot of the great things that you would expect for a high paid forward to do to be a top 6 forward on hopefully a contending team. But the results haven't been there. You know, if the Devils are going to continue sticking him with Hischier and Mercer, it's going to be more of a struggle, I think, to get him to the point production that most people will be happy with. I want him to continue to do what he's been doing for the most part. I'm not looking at these numbers and going, Meier needs to do something different. I'm always going to encourage more shots, more opportunities, but in reality, he's doing a lot of things right himself. I think he just needs a better situation, more selective usage, more favorable situations, and then I think he'll get more opportunities to get the points that people will be happy about. But it's got to bounce back, and it's got to happen, because if it doesn't, the frustration is going to mount further, and more fans are going to be hoping that Timo Meier asks to get out of his no trade clause, asks to waive that no movement clause and come out of New Jersey. I don't think he's going to score 35 or 40 goals. He may have one really hot season left in him as he enters his early 30s, and hopefully that's with the Devils. But I do think a better 2026-27 is possible. He's definitely a top 6 winger on this team. I definitely think he's going to stay as a Devil for the time being, but the Devils got to do something different with him. Otherwise, they're just looking for the more of the same. And honestly, I don't think that's been cutting it for $8.8 million. So those are a lot of words and a lot of time spent on Timo Meier. So I'm going to cut off the stream here. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank the people who matter. I want to thank my sunshine. I want to thank all the people who watch this posthumously. I want to thank my sources that I use for this slide deck. I want to thank Hat Trick Kane for the goal comp I showed earlier. Natural Stat Trick. Brad T's work is fantastic. I used Hockey Reference. I did look at NHL.com and NHL Edge for some data. By the way, as an aside, Timo Meier's not a super slow player. Like, he can keep up in Rush's offense. If Keefe wants to open up the offense, Timo Meier can support that. He did so with Lindy Ruff. It can work. It might be an idea also to consider. I also want to thank Elite Prospects because they had all the information about Timo Meier's youth. And shout out to my former site, All About the Jersey. Keep on grinding, guys. So with that being said, I'm John Fischer. Thank you for listening to this deep dive about Timo Meier, and we'll be discussing other topics about the New Jersey Devils